With all the fantastic receiver talent Hugh Freeze has brought into the Plains, how much will the tight ends be used this season, and will they run 12 personnel? Welcome on into the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single Friday is my good friend Ike Jones to talk a little tight end talk on a Friday. We've gone through all the position groups on offense, all the position groups on defense. As a matter of fact, we only have specialists and kicking left to talk about. But today is for the tight ends. I've been actually anticipating getting to this position group because as much 12 personnel as we've seen over the first 2 years, it feels like this is the year that they're going to have to shift what they're doing from an offensive scheme perspective more toward the wide receivers and running backs and away from the tight ends, because quite honestly, all the experience and talent is on the outside. But today's about the tight ends. And before we get started, let's talk to me about the tight end room. On today's show, we're going to talk about what that starting lineup might look like and how much they're going to be used. But what are your feelings about the guys we're about to talk about here and how much they'll be used this season?
It's hard to say how much utilization they're going to get because we do know that there's so much dynamic talent in the wide receiver rooms. But that's not to say that there aren't talented guys in this tight end room. I just don't know that very much about them, right? You got a lot of guys that haven't played a lot of snaps, regardless of whether they're transfers, true freshmen, or injured guys who've been injured most of their collegiate career. So it's difficult to project how much they're going to get utilized, but I can say with confidence that there are some talented young men in this group.
Yeah, look, we'll talk about who those young men are here in just a second. I'm with you. Like, I don't want it to make it seem to people like there's not talent in this room, but I will say, get ready to block. They're gonna be blocking. So let's get to the room. At first up on our list of tight ends, I know you guys are anticipating this. All right, Ryan G. Yes. Okay, I want to make sure I say his name right. I want to be respectful. Ryan G. Here in the fourth spot. Talk to me about Ryan G, man, and what he's got going on this year.
Yeah, he's a true freshman. He was one of the early commits to this class.
Yes.
He and Hollis Davidson are the two freshman tight ends in the room. And I could have put either one of those guys here and felt completely fine with that decision. The reason why I did end up putting Ryan G here over Hollis Davidson is because of what we just talked about in terms of blocking assignments. I think that he is the guy that's most ready to come in and be a blocker. He's the bigger body of the guys. And he's somebody who I think can go in there immediately and help in situations where you want more guys that can block in, outside of your running backs, picking up in blitz protection. If you're having issues blocking or pass rush blocking, I think Ryan G is a guy that can help. And if you want to go heavy and you want to be able to go out there and run the football with a bigger set of folks out there, he can do that. And he can catch the football, right? So he's not just a blocker. But I do think because he has the most ready body to go out there and block is why I put him here over Hollis Davidson in the fourth spot.
Yeah. As you mentioned, he was one of those first commits there. So Ryan G looking to develop into Hugh Freeze offense, certainly. Look, we're in a place where they've got 4 tight ends, right? And our next guy that's up on the list was a little bit of a conversion, but the tight end recruiting, right? You brought Rivaldo Fairweather in. It felt like he never really hit his peak, and I gotta tell you, I know he barely caught a pass while he was here at Auburn, but Luke Deal signed a 3-year, $3 million contract with the Detroit Lions. So they saw something in him,
right,
that obviously never materialized at Auburn. I've got some questions about tight end development that hopefully will be answered this season. But let's talk about who's next up on our list. We've got Ryan G. who is going to be looking to move forward here in Hugh Freeze's third year. But next up is a guy that a lot of people know, and that is Tate Johnson.
Yeah.
Tate is a converted guard on the offensive line. Now, this is something that happened a lot during Tuberville's era where we saw guys change positions, right? Offensive linemen and tight end. We saw that a couple times while we were in school with some swaps back and forth there. Talk to me about Tate Johnson. Is this a natural kind of position swap for him?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't play offensive tackle, but I do think he's got a little bit more mobility than you would expect for him to have as a guy who is an interior offensive lineman. And again, I think that this move for him is about the necessity to have guys who can block well on the outside. Tate Johnson's a guy who has all of the ability to block out there. He is a guy that injury really kind of stopped him from being able to get more playing time. At one point in time, he was the starting center for Auburn. I don't know if people remember this, but there was a point in time when he was the guy at center for Auburn for a couple of games before injury stopped that season. That was actually when Robbie Ashford was starting for Auburn. Tate Johnson was the center that was snapping the ball to him during those couple of games initially before he got injured. But between the injuries and the improvement in the recruiting for the offensive line, Tate Johnson decides to slide over into a tight end room that, again, just doesn't have any guys that have played very many snaps in college, whether it be transfer, not getting a lot of time at their old spot, whether it be true freshman or whether it be injury. So they wanted to have somebody who was accustomed to blocking in the SEC that they could bring in for heavy packages that would be specifically there for blocking. And I mean, he's got okay hands. I mean, I think he's decent at being able to do that, but make no mistake about it. This for him is about being able to block. So he's going to be a true H-back guy that's in there. Follow him to the football because he's going to be running over people when he gets his opportunity to get in there and block.
Tate Johnson there in the third spot there. So we've got Ryan, we've got Tate Johnson, and next up on our list here is Preston Howard, the transfer from Maryland. So talk to me about Preston Howard. You watched the film.
Yeah.
What do you see in the film for Preston Howard?
I didn't do a deep dive on Preston Howard's film, but I have looked at a little bit of it, and he's a guy who is a little more of the mold of a catcher than these other guys. He actually played a little bit of quarterback in high school. So he's a guy he's got some athleticism to him, but he is still primarily so far in his Maryland film, you'd see him used as a blocker, right? Like he's not the primary pass catching guy. So you're really seeing a shift in these guys. The only guy in that tight end room right now that I think is really more of a pass catcher than he is a blocker is Hollis Davidson, who's not on this list right now. And I think Hollis Davidson is actually a phenomenal athlete that can go out there and actually catch the ball from the tight end position. But Preston Howard can catch the ball, has a lot of athleticism, but he still is more adept as a blocking tight end. And so I think that's going to be his utilization in this offense, a guy who can go out there and be an extra blocker, an extra offensive lineman on the field. But don't limit him to that. He definitely can be a pass catcher in the offense.
All right. Look, Preston Howard joins the tight end room for Hugh Freeze and Derek Nix here in the third year. We're at the top now. So the last guy is someone that should be known to Auburn fans because, damn it, Ike, he's been in school for a while. That is Brandon Frazier. Brandon Frazier tops our list. He should be the number one tight end. I don't even think it's particularly close. But talk to me about Brandon Frazier. I do want to say this real quick. Brandon Frazier, in my opinion, it had a lot to do with why Mike O'Reilly decided to transfer.
And decided to come back for that additional year.
Yeah, I think that there was a feeling that no matter what he did, he could not get past Brandon Frazier, who, statistically has not done a lot here at Auburn, but like I said, Rivaldo was good. I wouldn't say he did a lot. I think he got some opportunities, but I wouldn't say he did a lot. But I'm interested in your take. Talk to me about Brandon Frazier and why he ended up here in his 6th year. His freshman year was 2020.
Yeah. Frazier's a guy who, from a size and athleticism perspective, is the prototype of a tight end, right? Like,
Yeah.
he is big, he can move, he's got good hands, he's got good physicality. But in all of his years at Auburn, he was buried on the depth chart when he initially got to Auburn behind some talented guys, right? Like, when he first got here, you're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, John Samuel Shanker was still here
Yeah.
when Frazier was first getting here. And then you get into the Valdo years, the last couple of seasons with him there. Luke Deal also was out there being able to be a guy in that room. So he was buried on the depth chart / had a bunch of injury issues. Last year, health was the bigger concern for him. He was out the vast majority of last season, was able to get a medical red shirt that allowed him to come back for his 6th year this year. So that was the biggest thing. I think he has everything that this coaching staff wants to see in a tight end as far as his size, athleticism, physicality. He just hasn't had an opportunity to showcase that on Saturdays in an Auburn uniform for a litany of reasons. So hopefully this is a year that Frazier is going to be able to blossom in this offense. Again, I think he's got all the tools. We'll see whether or not, as they say, availability is the best ability, and he has not had the availability to be able to do that.
Yeah. Let's take a look at our tight end room one more time. We've got Ryan G, Tate Johnson, Preston Howard, and Brandon Frazier in his 6th year on the Plains. He projects as tight end number 1 in this system this year. Now, we mentioned at the top of the show that Auburn had leaned heavy 12 personnel in these first 2 years compared to all the other formations. We're gonna get a quick word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what we expect in terms of the balance of play calling and what those formations will look like. This episode of the Auburn Express is brought to you by our friends at the Vibe Vault. You can find them at 3462 Crosswinds Road, Suite E in Phoenix City, Alabama. That's right across the street from the Chattahoochee Valley Community College, next to Renfro's Supermarket and Marco's Pizza. The Vibe Vault. If you're in the Columbus, Phoenix City area and you're looking to get fresh for the weekend, get fresh for the weekend with the Vibe Vault. Not just barbers, lifestyle consultants. This episode of The War Report is brought to you by our friends at The Rogue Shop. Visit rogueshop.com. Use code REPORTER. Get 15% off your Rogue Shop order. Pain, sleep, stress, anxiety, whatever ails you in life, The Rogue Shop has something that has you covered. Visit them for all your herbal medicinal needs. And we want to thank our friends at Golden's Cast Iron. Visit goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off your weights and code TWR for $65 off fire pits and Kamalo grills. The summer is here. You want to be outside grilling and chilling, or just getting in shape with some Golden's Cast Iron weights. Again, goldenscastiron.com/WR. Work out, grill out, chill out with Golden's Cast Iron. All right, let's jump back into our conversation. This is the tight end room. I'm going to put it up one more time here. Ryan G, Tate Johnson, Preston Howard, Brandon Frazier tops the list. As we mentioned, there's been a little bit of a talent shift, not only in terms of talent, but in terms of experience and knowledge of the system from tight end to wide receiver. Hugh Freeze put an emphasis on stacking the deck around Jackson Arnold. He's got the pass catchers with the pass radius and the playmaking ability that he's been wanting. Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, now Eric Singleton replacing kind of the Keandre Lambert-Smith as the dynamic transfer in that room. But don't forget about Perry Thompson and Horatio Fields, who are there waiting. There are other names. It's too many to talk about, but certainly they've got options at wide receiver. He said in our one-on-one interview that he hasn't done much 10 personnel, which we know, but we are definitely going to see it this year. What are the chances that is actually true? And what does that say for the fate of the tight end room and how much they'll be used this season?
I think there's a lot of truth to it, honestly, because I think that you almost need to be able to play all of these guys at wide receiver. I don't know that you're going to be able to satisfy enough of these guys in this room and be able to recruit again heavily at wide receiver if you're not out there showcasing the wide receiver talent that you have in a very dynamic way. Jackson Arnold wants to throw the ball around, and he's got all the tools to be able to do it. And no disrespect to the tight ends, I think the wide receivers are the guys that he wants to be able to throw the football to. So when you've got this many guys that are this talented, you have to be able to do that. And that is more of what you're accustomed to seeing from Coach Hugh Freeze, more of what I think Derek Nix wants to be able to do in the offensive schemes that he's helping to create. So though the 12, sometimes 13 personnel groups were trotted out there for Auburn in the first 2 years, I think those are going to be relegated to short distance goal line type situations for Auburn going forward. I don't know that you're going to see very much 12 personnel this season for Auburn. And unless the offensive line just proves to not be able to block well enough, and they have to go to a heavier package to be able to protect the quarterback.
Isaac, the first 2 years on the Plains, a lot of people made statistical jumps from Hugh Freeze's first year to his second year. Payne Thorne went from a 1,700-yard passer to a 2,700-yard passer. Jarquez Hunter became a 1,000-yard back in his second year. We saw Keandre Lambert-Smith come in and almost hit 1,000 yards. Cam Coleman is 600-yard freshman. There were stats to be had, even if it didn't result in dubs. But the one position group I can look at and say, I don't know if they made any kind of jump, a statistical jump, or any otherwise, is the tight end room.
Yeah.
Why do you feel? Why is that? Why is the tight end room not developing? But it seems all the other position groups are at least moving forward statistically.
Honestly, I think that I'm just gonna say it, bro. I'm just gonna say I don't know that they had a much higher ceiling than what they already like. There's only so much development that could have been had with the guys that were in the tight end room previous to now. Like I think that they had reached their ceiling in terms of what they were able to do. The only guy that I think, probably wasn't utilized enough in his abilities was a guy that's no longer at Auburn, and that's Micah Riley Ducker. Like I think Micah Riley had the ability to be able to do more. I just don't think that he fit the mold of what they wanted their tight ends to be able to do. And, there were some other things involving Micah Riley. Maybe the coaching staff didn't see what they needed to see from him in practice, whatever that might be, that didn't allow him to see the field. But in terms of the guys who did see the field, primarily in both of those first 2 seasons, you're talking about Rivaldo Fairweather, Luke Deal, right? Rivaldo Fairweather is a pass catching target that had a lot of ability, but his first year, he was featured quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, was pretty much the guy in the room catching, well, not in the room because he was a tight end, but like he was the primary pass catching target in the first season. Second season, you have 2 other wide receivers that are out there that are, by all accounts, more talented receivers. As good a receiver as Rivaldo Fairweather is, you had Keandre Lambert-Smith and Cam Coleman on the outside. They wanted to get the ball to those guys. So that means less opportunities for a guy like Valdo, especially when you're in a situation where you're not staying on the field long enough for anybody to get a bunch of targets.
Yeah.
And so, I do think that, Valdo probably was underutilized in his ability to be a jump ball target, a guy who could be a security blanket for Payton Thorne in certain scenarios and situations. But he wasn't ever getting better as a blocker. Like I didn't see a huge progression from him in his ability to block. So, I don't know what you credit that to. Is he just not a good blocker, or they not? I don't know. But I do think that they were close to where their ceiling was already. So there wasn't much room to improve him left.
Yeah, look, everybody will be called on this year. This is a prove-it year for Hugh Freeze and this offense. They've got to score points. They've got to finish drives, and they've got to move the needle, not only statistically, but it's got to result in wins. And if it does it, then certainly there's going to be a lot of changes happening on the Plains. That is your tight end room. So hopefully Brandon Frazier has the year he deserves in that spot, in that one spot in his 6th year. I don't see a ton of playing time for the other guys.
Yeah,
I don't.
again, unless there's a lot of short yardage situations and heavy packages coming in, 11 personnel probably is where it's going to be, and it's going maybe you rotate because they're running tempo, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, this might be slim in the tight end reps this year.
For sure. Look, if you great conversation, when I'm sure we'll continue going into fall camp. Guys, if you're watching this video on replay, do us a favor. If you're in the comment section, smash that super thanks button. Show us some love there. Help us keep our content going here. We're at SEC Media Days all week from Atlanta at the College Football Hall of Fame. That's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.